Not a Rabbi Podcast, episode number 3, Do We Need No Education? And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not a Rabbi Podcast. It is near the end of actually not September, but August right now. It's near the end of August. For many of us, that means that it is back to school time once again. Always remember the wonderful Staples commercial that happens, or that they had out, I think it was in the mid-1990s, with the parent jumping for joy over the kids going back to school, getting the school supplies for them, and the kids, I should say, really having no interest whatsoever in this and just look with the most dejected looking faces. It was probably one of the better television ads that I can remember. And that's why this episode today is going to be all about schooling. Unless you homeschool, most parents are happy that it's time to go back to school. Here in New York State, education has been an extremely hot topic for a couple of years now. Let's take it back to when it started, at least when I think it started, and that is when an organization that is called YAFED comes out criticizing the Jewish private schools, known colloquially as the yeshivas, and saying that they do not give enough education on general studies, specifically subjects such as math and English. That is their complaint, and they were pressuring the New York State Board of Education to do something about this and fix this problem. Now, they were getting a lot of press, they were getting a lot of articles in the New York Times and other publications, and the schools, which are all private schools, the schools went on the defense. And to counter the bad press and to put their own pressure on the Board of Education, they created their own organization. Their own organization is called PEARLS. It's an acronym for something. I don't know what exactly the acronym is. If you go to the show notes, there are going to be links for both YAFED and PEARLS. So you can take a look at those two organizations. Very interesting point here with both organizations' websites is that when you go there, the first thing that you will notice is a pop-up, and they want you to call your New York State senator, meaning that the senator that represents you for New York State, not Christian Gillibrand or Chuck Schumer, who are our U.S. state senators, U.S. senators for New York State. Slight distinction, but it makes a very big difference. Or your New York State representative, so that you could be heard about this issue. That's going on, and last year or so ago, New York State Board of Education actually did suggest new standards for yeshivas and really all private schools. And this is something that's important to note, is that it's about all private schools, not just specifically about the yeshivas, but about all private schools. And that would include your Catholic schools, that would include any other type of private school that you may have. And obviously those schools were not very happy with what New York State was doing either, because they didn't want New York State to get into their business. Like I said, New York State did come out with some of these requirements. These requirements were not looked on very well, and people did not appreciate them. I shouldn't even say appreciate. That's not the correct word. People did not think that these were requirements, that they were overly burdensome. Let's put it that way. I think that's the best way to put it. They were overly burdensome, and a lot of schools did not like these, and there was a lot of pushback from that. At that point in time, New York State Board of Education walked back some of those requests or some of those suggestions, standards that they were going to be making, and it's pretty much still in a status. It's still in flux at this point in time, and so a lot of schools aren't sure what's going to be going on with regard to the educational standards that are going to be needed. That is, so this is really going to be an ongoing story throughout this year, probably even throughout multiple years. And so we may be revisiting this topic another time if there is some news about that topic. All right, so there's a brief background about this. Jews have always been known, Jews have always been known as the people of the book, and they cherish education. This has really been the case from the times of Moses, when he transformed from a leader to a teacher. Basically, and mainly in the book of Deuteronomy, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks is an individual whom I greatly respect and think the world of, and he was actually the one that wrote this on his website, and it's called The Teacher as a Hero. There is a link for that in the show notes as well, so you can go ahead and read that. Even if you're not Jewish, he makes it accessible for you. He is an excellent writer. He is even a better speaker. Like I said, I am a big fan of his, and we'll be talking about him and some of his other topics that he writes about later on. And the studying that we've mostly done as Jews has been the study of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the Talmud, and the halachic books and novellas and the commentaries on the Talmud that have come after that. And that's really what we've, as Jews, are really cherished, the learning and being the people of the book. It's primarily from those books. And that is what it is. Now, the question has always been, and this is really what I want to get into today, is how much of general subjects do or should Jews know? And this is an interesting topic. It's an interesting conversation. I know that I come on probably a lot further on the left on this than some of my friends, some of my family do, and so it's interesting. Just to give you a brief story that happened to me firsthand. I'm a product of the yeshiva system, and we were, as a class, causing some trouble in our English language class. So talking about literature, poetry, Shakespeare, all grammar, all vocabulary, all those good things. Our principal pulled us over, or pulled us into a classroom, and he explained to us that even though learning Torah is important, and it's probably what you should put as maybe the primacy on that, you still need to know math. For a lot of the Talmudic tractates that there's a lot of math. There is some math involved, which always puts me at a disadvantage, but that's that's a totally different story. But there's also, you need to know English, and you need to know how to speak and write English proficiently and well. The reason for that being that you need to get your ideas across as an individual when you're talking to somebody. You can't just sit there in a broken English trying to express yourself. You need to know how to express yourself properly, primarily and exclusively because you are in America. And the last time I checked, America is still an English-speaking language. And so therefore, and this made such an incredible impression upon me, where the principal of our school was a very good man, and he was a very learned man, and he had to make this point to us so that we should not throw things away. And that's really where I come from. But it's interesting is that this debate has been with us as Jews through the past 2,000 years, if not longer. You see these conversations that we have in the Talmud, that you get these types of questions. In fact, there's a famous I mean, I don't really like to use the term, but there's a question that gets brought up in the Talmud in the first tractate of the Talmud, called Brachot, or Brachos, and the question is, should you just study Torah, or should you study Torah and take care and reap and have a field? Because mostly they were an agrarian society at that point in time. There was one person who said that they should do both, and there was another individual who said they should only do one, and that would be learn Torah. This type of dichotomy and tension has been really around since that time, if not earlier. And you see this, you take a look at some of what goes on in the Talmud. They will bring in words that or concepts that may or may not be from Jewish points of view. Science specifically, they always are having scientific discussions often about what the sun and different things that go on. Science is included in this. So you see that there has always been a tension and a dichotomy. This really goes through up until our times, where we're seeing this, and it's never been fully resolved. And quite frankly, I don't know if it'll ever be fully resolved. But this is the issue at hand. And so where I come down on it is, I believe, much like my principal, who insisted that we take our English subjects seriously. And there are a lot of other rabbis that have suggested this, and this is where I stand on it. I mean, I definitely believe that this is such an important thing for our youth and people who are going to be leaders down the road, that they need to know how to communicate their ideas, both in written word and in spoken language, to get their points across in a proper way. And so therefore I am very strong with this. I don't know if I necessarily go ahead and agree completely with the Yafid side, but I don't, nor do I totally agree with the side of the Pearls side of things. And it's I wish there would be a happy medium that could be found, that everyone would be miserable with, but each side wants to have it as a zero-sum game, really. It's an interesting question, and one that's going to have to be watched. At this time, I did want to mention an interesting book that really talks about this, and it is called Judaism's Encounters with Other Cultures, subtitled Rejection or Integration. This is a series of scholarly works, I would say, with sources for history, going through, and some of the topics are Rabbinic Judaism and general culture, Judaism and general culture in medieval times, Rabbinic openness to general culture, early modern period, and Rabbinic openness to general culture in the early modern period in Western and Central Europe, which was the same thing that I just gave you before. Very fascinating book, very good. If you like to read history documentation and history lectures and the like, this is a really good book. I will put it into the show notes as well. There's also one other lecture at the end here, Torah and General Culture, Confluence and Conflict. Excellent book. I'm holding it right now, as you could probably hear me closing the book. But I would if you're interested, I would highly recommend getting a copy of it and going ahead to read it, to get an understanding of what the tension has always been going on for the last 2,000 years, and we're up to this point. That's pretty much where things stand. And what I think about things on this issue. I would love to see the kids take the English subjects a lot more seriously. Being that I'm an English teacher, I'm sure nobody is surprised by that. I'm actually not an English language teacher anymore. I am switching straight to history, which is something that excites me, being a history nerd. But definitely something that it definitely needs to be done, and I wish. It's a huge problem. It's an interesting problem, because the parents will tell you that they feel that it's very important, and everyone's told everyone says that it's very important, yet when it comes to it, the kids just don't seem to care that much or want to do the minimum that's available to them. Now, some of it could be that it's because they're teenagers and that's what teenagers do, but it's an interesting problem, like I said, and we'll probably have to revisit this a little bit more when I have some, get some more coherent thoughts on that. Wanted to thank you guys for listening once again. This is episode 3. We don't need no education, ? And we do now have a email address, so if you want to send me an email with some questions, comments, criticisms, topic ideas, whatever it may be, send me an email. You could do that, notarabipod@gmail.com. I would like to thank the intro and outro music. Would like to thank the individual that made that, John Benedict. And of course, the podcast art is done by Kelly Kirkman. Thank you, Kelly, for doing the podcast art. Please do not forget to give a review to the show as well. We would love to do that. And I will see you again in roughly 2 weeks. Bye.